Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Getting back to work on the Cobra in this video. Last video on the car, I was kind of walking over a bunch of the stuff that I have to get done before I can get it back on the road, as far as repairing some coolant and oil leaks, a bunch of other little things along with those. And then, once all those are done, I can go ahead and get the transmission back in, and I still need to do the front coilovers. So that being said, I'm gonna go ahead, get the camera turned around and get to work. It's going to be time to start draining all the fluids and then start disassembling the engine bits that need to come apart so I can replace some seals. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. All right, under the car, and I'm going to start by draining the coolant. And this is the driver's side of the engine. So what I'm going to do is pull this plug here on the engine. I don't have a drain on the radiator or anything like that to get it started. It's pretty much just make the mess by pulling the hose. And I gotta drain the block anyway because I'm pulling the front cover off. So I figure I'll just go ahead and start here, get this side, and then I'll go over and get the last bit out of the other side. The plug on the passenger side is on the front of the passenger side of the engine, whereas the driver's side is on the rear of the engine. So I'm gonna go ahead, grab a wrench, get that plug removed, and start draining coolant. So, have you made a decision and proceeded with it and then pretty much immediately regretted it? That's me right now. So first, I will start off in saying that that plug is a 9/16 wrench, so that is what you will need to go ahead and remove the drain plug. Second, I will say drain it any other way possible before you do that, because when you pull that plug out, it is going to go everywhere. And if you do not have a floor pan that is perfectly sealed, like I guess mine is not, you will have coolant in the bottom of your drop floor footwell on the passenger side when you remove this plug, and coolant goes everywhere and runs along the frame tube and finds its way into the dropped foot box that you can see there. So I am currently drying off the carpeting that is in my drop foot box. So just gonna give you a heads up on that. Be careful. Don't be like me. Don't be stupid. Don't make bad choices. And drain the coolant out of the radiator hose first, if possible, to minimize the amount that is going to be trying to flood your your driver's side footwell. And back under the car, just to show you, these are the culprit spots right here at the front of the foot box, and then down here at the back of the foot box. There are holes there, and the water coolant, just from spilling out of the engine there and hitting the frame rail, just running along that, it was able to wick up in those holes and get my carpet wet. I mean, again, it wasn't flooded per se, but it was definitely wet, and I was able to mop up quite a bit with a paper towel. So clean up the mess for the most part on this side. So now I am going to pull the plug out of the front passenger side of the block. It is right, sorry, bad angle, up here next to the frame, or the engine mount. You can see the plug there. So that one needs to come out to drain the passenger side of the block. All right, and passenger side is done as well and cleaned up. Not as big of a mess as the driver's side was, but it still made a pretty mess, splashing everywhere. So just a heads up, you pull those drain plugs out of the block, they are going to make a mess. I may look into seeing if there are like an alternate, like petcock valve type, where it would just drain directly down instead of trying to spray out the side when you pull the actual plug out. Not like this is something that's done very commonly, but being that in this car there is no radiator drain, that may be a smart move to make. So just something I'm thinking about. All right, that mess is cleaned up, and now it is on to the next mess, and that's going to be draining the oil. So grab a crescent wrench, start loosening up the main drain, let that go, and then once that's done, I can go ahead and get the front drain, because this is a dual sump pan, as you can see. So we'll go ahead, grab a wrench, and get the oil draining. All right, real quick, let the rear one drain for quite some time. Nothing else was coming out of it. Plug back in, and as you can see, the front is finishing up draining right now. So I'm just gonna let that go for a while, make sure there's nothing left, and then I'll go ahead and get to work on dropping the pan. All right, I'm done draining all the oil, and you can see I've kind of cleaned that mess up, but you can probably also see in here that I've started creating another mess, and that is because I did go ahead and pull the lower hose off the radiator, letting that complete its drain. So that will be all the coolant out of here. I definitely wish I had a petcock valve on the bottom of this radiator. It would make life so much easier because it is just a monster mess when I have to do this. But is what it is. It is the radiator I have and stuck dealing with it. So anyway, I did make a little change. What I'm gonna do is start at the top of the engine and start pulling off the intake manifold, just because I still have yet to order any of the parts to do this. I need to start shopping around and, find the right places, because I always look for the best prices and, just want to see if I can find the best deals. So there's a couple places I want to look. I got some, cash or rewards credits, things like that I have to, just use accordingly. But anyway, so I'm gonna get up top, start pulling the intake manifold off. I figure if I can get that off, I can at least, put a towel and block over, the top of the engine to keep dirt out of it. Whereas if I pull the oil pan off, it's a lot harder to seal that up. So that being said, I'm gonna get up top and start removing parts. All right, back up top, you can see I've already removed the air cleaner and started unplugging all the connectors, got the throttle return spring off. So I do need to remove the linkage. I'm gonna go ahead and grab some wrenches to do that. And I just need a flathead screwdriver just to pop off those last couple of vacuum hoses. They didn't want to come off very easily. So I'll go ahead and get to work on getting those few things removed, and I'll be back. All right, couple of 7/16 wrenches, got the linkage removed, and then a 1/2-inch socket, got the 4 throttle body nuts removed, and everything has been removed from the turkey pan. So now I go ahead and pull the turkey pan off and then start working on getting the cap and rotor out of the way and go from there. All right, as you can see, turkey pan is off, and I'm starting to pull off the wires and distributor cap. I'm kind of doing this just so I can remember how I had things layered, so I know which order to remove things and where they were when I had it assembled. So just giving a little update, and I'm gonna finish removing the cap and wires. All right, as you can see, cap and wiring, or spark plug wires, are all removed. So next I need to start tackling the engine wiring. I did go ahead and remove the upper coolant hose. I removed the clamps on the 2 heater core hoses, but I do need to still get those off of the water pump. But what I was gonna do next is start working on getting the wiring all disconnected. The setup has 2 disconnects down there, so I can keep everything that's on the intake manifold on it. Although the one problem I have is the coil wire. I do have hardwired into my main harness because I do have a cutoff switch in the interior as like a kill switch. So what I have to do for that is that wire, thankfully, it only has a couple of things that are on it. So I'm just gonna pull it through underneath where it's snaked in the intake manifold. So I'll disconnect it here, pull it through. It just has the IAC plug and then the distributor and coil plugs on it. And that way I can just leave it with the body harness over there out of the way. And then that will be all I need to do as far as disconnecting the wiring. All right, as you can see, the heater core hoses been disconnected, put off to the side. And then I also was able to pull that wiring through. It's kind of draped there, but you can see there is the distributor connector still hooked up to it, and all the coil wires go into it, but I was able to pull it all out through that area there. So that is one of the harnesses for the EFI setup. The other one I can go ahead and leave there and leave everything underneath the intake manifold. So all that's really left before I can pull the intake off is I need to get the engine turned to top dead center, and then go ahead and pull the distributor. And then once that's done, it is just disconnecting the fuel line from the rail, and then also the coolant, well, what's actually the oil temperature sensor that is in the coolant passage that I mentioned previously. I need to fix, get that out of place, and then I can go ahead and remove all the bolts and start popping the intake manifold. All right, as you can see, distributor is now out. I went ahead, grabbed a 3/4 wrench, and turned the crank until I had it set at top dead center, so it is in the right spot as far as the distributor goes and everything, and then loosened up the hold down, removed it, and was able to pull out the distributor. I will say on mine, because I have this overflow tank here to make it look, somewhat accurate, there's not enough clearance to take the distributor out with that in place unless you remove the actual distributor cap base, the plastic part, from the housing. So I had to take it out in 2 parts. So I had to pull the rotor out, then undo the 2 Phillips screws to remove the lower housing, and then I was able to pull the distributor out without having any clearance issues with the coolant tank. So next I need to grab some AN wrenches and remove that temp sensor, and then it will be the fuel line, and then it'll be time to loosen up the intake. All right, as you can see, fuel line is disconnected and I have removed that sensor. You can see it sitting over there. I did take a mini torch and put a little heat in the area of the sending unit just to confirm that yes, that is in fact the oil temperature sending unit probe, because that is the gauge that moved when heat was applied to it. So I did have them backwards, which I thought, but now it is 100% confirmed. So that one is labeled oil, so I'll get that in the oil pan when everything goes back together. So that being said, everything is removed that needs to be removed from the intake manifold. So next is going to be just pulling all the intake manifold bolts and then prying it loose and removing the manifold. All right, all the bolts are out. One thing to mention, it's similar to if you're torquing this thing, you want to start with the outside ones, work your way in as you're loosening them, just to keep from warping anything, and then go ahead and take them all out. So yeah, bolts, washers removed. Next I need to grab pry bar, and then I can pull the manifold off. All right, and there it is, intake manifold off. Actually, it was pretty easy to remove it. I used that long pry bar up there, and I was able to put it underneath the water neck off the intake manifold and pry against that bar there for the alternator mount. So yeah, it was able to pry between, and a little bit of leverage. It popped the front of the intake loose and then just wiggled a little bit, and the rear china wall broke free, and then I was just able to pick it up, move it out of the way. So intake is off. Next thing I'm going to do is just grab some paper towels and cover up the valley just to keep any dirt or anything out of there, and just put a board over it to make sure everything stays in place. All right, all set there, covered up, so should keep most things out of there for now. Just mostly worried about any dust or whatnot with the wind blowing. So that being said, I'm gonna end this one here. I know it wasn't very exciting, and this video was more for my use as far as just showing where everything was hooked up to, things like that. As I have to reassemble this one, I get all of the parts in. So, like I said, I have not ordered anything yet. I need to start getting on ordering parts, doing some shopping around. Get those ordered, and then I will start tearing down the front of the engine, which is going to revolve around getting the alternator and all that stuff removed, pulleys removed, water pump removed, and then I can pull the oil pan, then the front cover. So getting there slowly but surely. So yeah, next video we'll start getting into all that stuff, and hopefully parts will start showing up here shortly. I will look into getting them ordered in the next day or so. So that being said, if you want to follow along, if you like what you're seeing, please hit like. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I do review them. I will reply. I do have a second YouTube channel devoted to firearms. If that is something you're interested in, there's a link in the description below. Check it out. I also have a Rumble channel covering the same stuff. If you're on Rumble, want to subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Link in the description. I do have some merch for sale. You can probably see the items under this video, and there is also a link in the description as well. That being said, thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.